Hey everyone, it's time for another story. Before we start, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates, and comment which manhwas you want to see here. We're in this together. Let's get into the story. Today's story has an intriguing premise. The protagonist of this tale is just a lumberjack who has spent 10 years in the tranquility of an isolated mountain, a dream for those who don't like people much, chopping wood every single day. His name, Bai Lochin, carries a weight he doesn't yet understand. He has no grand ambitions, only the pursuit of a peaceful life. But there's something about him, a silent yet powerful energy that sparks the curiosity of beings far beyond the ordinary. After 10 years of chopping wood, exhausting, right, immortal women, one after another, knelt before him, begging to become his disciples. It's just like those internet sages say, meat only lands on a vegan's plate. Let's go. The story begins at King Luan Peak with our protagonist chopping a massive amount of firewood. Soon, he sits on a log and remarks that just like every other day, he has cut a mountain of wood. Then the system displays his total count, 3.65 million logs. The protagonist wonders if he really cut that much wood. Just then, the system congratulates him on acquiring the title of Holy Lumberjack. While continuing to chop wood, memories of his past come flooding back. Happens all the time, right? Completely normal. At first, everyone thought the protagonist was originally from Earth, a young man who became quite popular thanks to a talent show. However, after disobeying the agency's orders, he was cast aside, succumbed to depression, and drowned himself in alcohol. Following this, he was reborn in the Kinghang Academy in the southern region of Yunhang, becoming a professor in the Academy's Rune Seals department. Upon his reincarnation, he received a system that was supposed to help him showcase his strength and live a completely different life. However, he never expected that his system would be a wood-chopping system completely useless to him, unless, of course, we're talking about chopping wood. Despite earning the title of Holy Lumberjack, the protagonist laments that he still hasn't advanced past the luminosity stage. Suddenly, Grandmaster Bai lands on a massive pile of logs and tells him that the leader has requested him to inform the protagonist that the examinations at the front palace of the mountain have begun. Bai politely, but firmly, asks the protagonist to head to the front courtyard and select a disciple. Bai believes that even if the protagonist goes to the courtyard, with his current level of cultivation, it's highly unlikely that he will gain a disciple. The protagonist responds that he understands everything Bai has said and dismisses him. Bai then leaves, knocking over a huge pile of logs that the protagonist had neatly stacked. The protagonist reflects that, given his current cultivation level, he probably won't get a disciple. However, it's been a while since he's had a barbecue, so he decides to check on the dragon in the Kangwu Abyss to see if it has fattened up. At the registration plaza, the wandering swordsman Jiang Hemming is being praised by another man, who marvels at how effortlessly he managed to recruit 500 disciples. Such a feat is truly enviable. Another person comments that, as always, many people are interested in the sword arts department. Jiang humbly acknowledges the admiration, appreciating the respect his charisma commands. Some men are talking amongst themselves when one of them mentions that, in contrast, no one was interested in the Rune Seals exam, and that instructor Bai Lochin didn't even show up. Another man in the group says that Bai Lochin is just a teacher still stuck in the rotating light stage, and going there would only bring him shame. The third man, visibly furious, exclaims that a worthless person like the protagonist occupies King Luan Peak, which has the best scenery in the entire academy. Sounds like someone is a little jealous here. Suddenly, Jiang Hemming shouts at Lai Guangqi, the leader of Kinghang Academy, saying that Grandmaster Bai has gone too far. He hasn't had a single disciple in 10 consecutive years, which is why he refuses to appear. Jiang then begs Lai Guangqi to remove the protagonist from his teaching position and drive him out of King Luan Peak in order to restore the academy's prestige. However, Lai Guangqi reminds everyone present that the young protagonist lost all of his cultivation and spent 10 years stuck in the rotating light stage to protect the academy. Jiang responds, saying that he will never forget Grandmaster Bai's contributions, but in his current state he is no longer qualified to be a teacher. He really seems to have something against him. Soon, young Master Yan suggests that the leader strip the protagonist of his position as a teacher, but allow him to continue living on King Luan Peak. One of the participants agrees with him. At that moment, the protagonist arrives, holding a dead snake in his right hand, thanking them all for their concern. Jiang Hemming scoffs, saying that while the protagonist may be in good mood, isn't it humiliating to be injured so badly by a mere snake? The protagonist responds that the beast must have had some cultivation, as it almost killed him. Among the crowd, a young woman observes the situation and thinks that while the protagonist's cultivation level is relatively low, he always seems to remain in good spirits. She also notes that the snake looks ordinary and assumes it probably doesn't have any cultivation. However, as she focuses on the snake, she notices a sinister red aura emanating from it, sending chills down her spine. Jang then tells the protagonist that he urgently needs treatment and conveniently offers him a 5 elements Yuan cultivation pill that he happens to have. However, he declares that he will only give the pill if the protagonist manages to recruit at least 1 disciple today. If he fails to do so, he must resign. It's do or die, simple as that. The protagonist, too lazy to play along, admits that he won't be able to recruit a single disciple this year and says he'll just leave to avoid any trouble. Jang, furious, interrupts him, running to the leader and reporting that the protagonist himself admitted to being lazy and incompetent. He argues that someone like him doesn't deserve to be a teacher and begs the leader to fire him. The leader's guards agree with Jang, stating that the protagonist is no longer capable of teaching. The leader then turns to the protagonist and asks if he has anything to say in his defense. Completely unconcerned, the protagonist casually responds that it's not so bad, at least it means 1 less responsibility for him. Which, to be fair, isn't wrong. He adds that he doesn't care as long as they let him keep Kingwon Peak. In the crowd, a young man secretly listens to the conversation, thinking that as soon as the protagonist loses his position, Kingwon Peak will be his. Finally, the leader announces his verdict. Bai Lochin, instructor of the Rune Seals department at the academy, as you have failed to accept a disciple for 10 years due to your low cultivation, you are no longer qualified to continue as a teacher, effective immediately. After finishing his statement, the young woman in the middle of the crowd suddenly shouts for everyone to wait. She declares that she is willing to study under instructor Bai and learn the art of rune seals, shocking everyone present. They immediately begin listing all of the protagonist's flaws, saying that he is at the rotating light stage, that he is weaker than a chicken, and that Bai is nothing but a waste. They ask the young woman if she's gone insane. I really think they have something against him, you know. Jang asks the young woman if she wasn't paying attention to everything they just said. He then insults the protagonist, calling him pure trash, and claims that he has nothing to teach her. He argues that becoming his student would turn her into nothing more than a servant. Still in shock, Jang insists that the young woman is highly talented and possesses excellent spiritual roots. If she is willing to join the sword arts department instead, he will personally grant her a position of prestige. Going up to the protagonist and hugging his right arm, the young woman says she has already made her decision and pleads for the protagonist to accept her as his disciple. The protagonist remarks that she's being too hasty and states that he isn't interested in accepting her. Furious, Jang wonders how anyone could abandon the sword arts department to learn rune seals, especially from a piece of trash like the protagonist. He insists that something suspicious is going on, but soon convinces himself that the young woman must be part of some plan. He assumes the protagonist intends to place her by his side, securing a position of power within the department. Then, when the time is right, the department will become his personal playground to do as he pleases. Jang then points at the protagonist and the young woman, saying that it was a clever scheme, but too bad for them. He isn't an idiot. The protagonist and the young woman are left wondering what he's talking about. Looks like he finally lost it. Jang then turns to the leader and quotes an old saying. A melon plucked from its vine loses its sweet taste. He asks the leader to permit the young woman to become the protagonist's disciple. The protagonist then asks the young woman why she is so eager for him to be her teacher. He points out that, as she can see, he is nothing more than trash stuck in the rotating light stage. At that moment, memories flood the young woman's mind. The story reveals that she was once an immortal who had to reincarnate with her memories intact because her cultivation path was unsuccessful. She originally planned to join the sword arts department. With her talent and appearance, she would have had no trouble seizing over 80% of the department's cultivation resources. Just a tiny percentage, right? However, she never expected to encounter a true master at the last moment. Thanks to her immortal vision, she knows she doesn't make mistakes. It's obvious. The snake is on the verge of becoming a dragon. If judged by human cultivation standards, that snake would be the supreme master of the Mahayana stage. Even though she was an immortal in her past life, she wouldn't dare claim she could subdue a snake that is about to become a dragon. She then looks at the protagonist and wonders, how did someone at the rotating light stage manage to tame a dragon? The leader then speaks, stating that since Instructor Jang has no objections, he will make the announcement. Before he can do so, the protagonist hurriedly asks him to wait because he has something to say. Ignoring the protagonist, the leader announces that the young woman will officially be transferred from the sword arts department to the rune seal department. The leader then looks at the protagonist, makes a thumbs-up gesture, and asks him, "Isn't your big brother here just amazing?" Furious, the protagonist snaps back, "Amazing, my ass." The leader then declares that the recruitment conference is officially over. He basically lost the argument. As everyone heads toward the exit of the plaza, Jang grabs the protagonist's arm and congratulates him on securing an excellent disciple. He remarks that in 3 months, the Rune Seal department will perform exceptionally well in the Academy's exam. Finding Zhang's sudden change in attitude suspicious, the protagonist asks if he hit his head. He then turns to the young woman and says that, by the way, he doesn't know her name. He immediately follows up with a question, asking what it is. The young woman introduces herself as Su Liu. Feeling bored, the protagonist thinks that if he had known things would turn out like this, he wouldn't have even come. Now he's gotten himself into unnecessary trouble, finding the whole situation utterly exhausting. No use crying over spilled milk. Trying to hide his boredom, the protagonist responds to Su Liu by saying that her name is beautiful. Su immediately thanks him for the compliment. As they continue walking, the protagonist knows there's no turning back. He remembers the saying, "A master only shows the path. Cultivation depends on the disciple." Whatever happens from now on will be up to Su Liu. Upon arriving at Qingluan Peak and seeing the massive pile of firewood, Su Liu thinks to herself that the protagonist is truly someone powerful. She wonders why he is treated like this. With his level of cultivation, he could easily crush King Hong Academy. Why does he keep putting up with it? The protagonist then turns to Su Liu and says he wants to make a few things clear about his teaching method. First, there are no planned lessons. They, the room seal department, are self-reliant. Second, they are free to come and go as they please. There's no need to report to him about where they're going or what they're doing. Third, as she may have noticed, cultivation resources here are rather scarce since he doesn't have any students. However, he reassures Su Liu not to worry. As her teacher, he will do his best to help her, ensuring that she has the necessary resources. As for her room, he hasn't figured that out yet and asks if she has any questions. He then hands her 2 books he prepared. The first book can be considered his personal textbook. It covers all rune seals, breaking them down step by step according to their difficulty, making things easier right from the start. The second book contains practical exercises with difficulty levels clearly marked. He advises Su to take her time with her studies and warns her not to be greedy, trying to learn everything at once. He adds that he will check her progress from time to time and urges her to work hard. Immediately, Su responds that she will remember his teachings. The protagonist then points to a location and says that the disciples' quarters are over there. Since all the rooms are vacant, she is free to choose whichever one she likes. He also tells her that if she ever lacks anything, she should look for the disciples of the Internal Affairs Department and they will arrange everything for her. Looking at those rundown shacks, Su wonders if it's too late to revoke her department transfer, but she quickly changes her mind, resolving to endure it. If it has to be difficult, then so be it. With that mentality, she can go anywhere she wants in life. The protagonist then begins removing the blue skin from the snake, which isn't actually a snake, but a dragon. He cuts it into pieces and skewers them. Soon, he sets up a grill with charcoal, summons a small spark at his fingertip, and fires off a light flame to start roasting the dragon meat. Inside the shack, Su Liu smells the scent of roasting dragon meat and finds it amazing. After opening the window of the dusty shack, she sees the protagonist grilling the dragon. Su then remembers that dragons are still immortal beasts, and that if one were to obtain one, it should be offered to the patriarch. Seeing that the protagonist is casually eating the dragon meat, Su Liu realizes that she has been cultivating for thousands of years and has never tasted dragon meat. So she walks up to the protagonist and says that she is feeling a little hungry and asks if she can have some of the dragon meat. I believe a sirloin steak would be tastier, but oh well. Immediately, the protagonist says no. Surprised by the answer, Su Liu thinks she never imagined that a dignified immortal like her would be denied a mere piece of meat. With teary eyes, Su Liu stares at the protagonist from a distance, making him tell her not to look at him like that. No means no. Su turns away angry and calls him a stingy master. The protagonist then asks her to wait. She turns back happy, asking if she can eat now. The protagonist then takes a skewer, removes a piece of meat, leaving only a tiny scrap with some seasoning, and tells Su to lick it. Yes, lick it. Finding it morally ridiculous, Su takes the skewer anyway. The protagonist then tells her that disciples shouldn't call their masters stingy. He also tells Su that after licking the skewer, she will understand why her master is acting this way. Without hesitation, Su Liu licks the skewer and is shocked by the incredibly abundant spiritual energy. And from a simple skewer, no less. Overwhelmed by the energy, Su says she can't take it, sweating cold. She quickly realizes that she had no idea that a mere tiny bit was equivalent to about half a year of cultivation, and that at her current level, she's unable to contain the oppressive energy within the dragon meat. Had she eaten the meat, she would have exploded and died. Immediately, Su thanks the protagonist for his generosity. The protagonist tells Su that just one lick a day is enough and warns her not to be greedy. Grateful once again, Su says she will definitely remember that. As night falls, 2 men sneak up to Qingluan Peak, jump over the training center's wall, and claim that the protagonist's horse possesses great spirituality. The last time some men from the clan tried to steal it, they were beaten up by the protagonist. One of the men asks if their plan will really work with just the two of them. The second man tells him not to worry as he has taken precautions. He then reveals a small artifact and explains that it is 100 days of drunkenness, something the big brother has been researching recently. A light spray of it on monsters of grade 5 or below will instantly knock them out. It has a similar effect to some cheap alcoholic drinks. The second man then tells the first one to stay quiet because the protagonist is nearby and might overhear their conversation. Meanwhile, the protagonist is heading toward his horse to feed it. Upon arrival, the protagonist talks to his pet and reminisces about the time he found it. He remembers that the horse was so skinny and small that it looked like a little donkey, but now has a majestic appearance. He then strokes the horse's face and asks it to watch over the place because he is going to sleep. Taking advantage of the protagonist's absence, the men begin their plan. Near the horse, they say it's time for it to return to the beast training department. A rather exotic department, huh? Minutes earlier in her room, Su Liu had already noticed the presence of the two men. While reading one of the books the protagonist had given her, she wonders who has the audacity to commit the outrage of entering the peak. So Su gets out of her bed to see who is invading the peak, claiming that she will teach them a lesson. Upon arriving outside, Su Liu sees one of the men pouring the 100 days of drunkenness liquid into the horse's food. Furious, Su asks those men who they are and what their names are while a blue aura covers her body. One of the men immediately asks who that woman is. The other man then says that she must be the weirdo who gave up a prestigious position in the sword arts department to learn from the protagonist, whom they consider trash. One of the men tells Su that this has nothing to do with her and asks her to go back to her room and sleep. Su Liu responds by stating that as long as she is there, they will not touch anything that belongs to the protagonist. The man then charges at Su Liu, declaring that she has chosen the hard way. With a swift advance, the man tells Su that it was her choice, so she shouldn't blame him for the consequences. Su Liu quickly dodges the man's attack and lands a kick on his chin, sending him flying backward. With blood dripping from his mouth, the man admits that the girl has some tricks up her sleeve. She has to be skilled after all. He then states that he will attack Su again and tells his companion to assist him if things go south. Summoning a flame-like yellow aura, the man charges at Su Liu once more. However, Su Liu swiftly retaliates, landing a kick on his arm and engulfing it in a strange blue fire. Collapsing to the ground, the man screams in agony, saying that his arm hurts too much. He curses the wretched fire, exclaiming that it is devouring his spiritual energy. Enraged, the other man draws his sword and rushes at Su Liu as well. 2 against 1, that's just unfair. After all the commotion, the protagonist wakes up and looks out the window to see what is happening. Still half asleep, he simply snaps his fingers, creating a soundproof barrier. Meanwhile, Su Liu strikes the other man with a blow to his chest. Su Liu then tells the men that apparently the protagonist also wants them to learn a lesson. Terrified by her power, the men claim that they don't wish to learn a lesson and beg Su Liu to calm down. Back at the peace training department, a senior veteran, He Xiangsheng, furiously declares that this has gone too far. One of the two men who invaded Qingluan Peak says that they tried, but the protagonist's new disciple is too powerful. They were no match for her. The other man tells the veteran not to worry, assuring him that once they recover from their injuries, it will bring the horse Wuzhu back. The veteran then orders each of them to take 3 spirit restoration pills and 2 spirit nourishment pills, saying they should consider it compensation for their injuries. The men gratefully thank the veteran for the pills, to which he quickly responds by telling them to treat their wounds while he takes care of the matter. The leader then commands everyone in the beast training department to follow him to Qingluan Peak, stating that he is going to seek justice. A rather strange way of doing so, but okay. Arriving after the other men, one young man tells the great veteran to wait. As he approaches the veteran, he reminds him that the protagonist is still an instructor, and that this time the fault was theirs. He warns that if they go directly to the peak, they will only cause more trouble. The leader then asks if they are just going to let it go and argues that the horse on Qingluan Peak belongs to their department. He questions who gave the protagonist the right to take it. The young man tells the veteran that he has misunderstood everything, and claims that the protagonist's disciple has gravely violated the academy's rules by beating up those men. So self-defense is against the rules here, seriously. Then he goes to the leader and whispers, saying that they just need to use the leader's high moral standing, and that the protagonist will be speechless when he sees what Su Liu did to the 2 newcomers. Then they can get the Wuzhu horse back. He says the protagonist has to take care of his disciples. The protagonist can't refuse. The veteran then says that this seems like a good plan and that they will proceed with it. He calls everyone to the Hall of Law Enforcement. The night passes, and the next morning at Qingluan Peak, the protagonist leaves his room and finds Su Liu already awake. She wishes him a good morning. He is surprised to see her awake and asks how her reading of the book went last night. Trying to come up with an excuse, Sue tells the protagonist that regarding the book, even though she spent the entire night defending Kingluan Peak from those newcomers, she knows that half a page was enough to exhaust all her spiritual energy. Sue is left speechless in front of the protagonist. He then tells Sue that it's her business and that he won't interfere in her studies. He starts his day by going to chop wood. Su Liu then tells the protagonist that she only read half a page. Immediately, the protagonist stops chopping wood, looks back, and asks Sue what she just said. He questions if she really only read half a page the whole night. Half a page in 12 hours is trouble, you know. Afraid of the protagonist's complaint, Sue says she's sorry and that she disappointed him. To Sue's surprise, the protagonist says the opposite. It was a great surprise to him. Leaving Sue confused, the protagonist says he thought she would only be able to read a few lines. Sue then says to the protagonist that for him to say something like that, did he really think she was stupid? The protagonist says it has nothing to do with that, and as he said, it was a pleasant surprise. Surprised, the protagonist knows that the book contains his collection of seals and runes, and he didn't expect her to be able to read half a page in a single night. Reading here seems to be something different. Then the protagonist tells Su Liu that while knowledge of runes and seals is important, there's no need for her to rush everything in due time. He throws a token for Su Liu to catch and says she will have access to the Academy's library with that token. There, she will find other martial scrolls to read, and as the token level increases, she'll find better scrolls. Su Liu asks the protagonist what she needs to do to level up the token. The protagonist explains that there are two ways. One is by completing irregular tasks at the front of the Academy, or by participating in the disciple tests. Lai Yu says she understands and thanks the protagonist for the advice. Su Liu compares the token to the protagonist's book, and since she's been immortal for at least 10,000 years, what she lacks are martial manuscripts. She throws the token the protagonist gave her far away from the peak and says she will study the protagonist's secret manuscript for the rest of her life. So why would she want to learn other things? What would a lifetime of doing the same thing be? Seeing that the protagonist noticed she threw the token out of the peak, she asks him what he's looking at in the distance. With a little anger, the protagonist calls the disciple of Kingluan Peak, Su Liu, over to him to receive her punishment. Su Liu, startled, claims that the punishment must have something to do with the bullies who invaded Kingluan Peak last night. She tells the protagonist that she couldn't help herself and fears it caused trouble. The protagonist tells Su not to worry and to let him handle it, asking her to just focus on her studies. He then calls Su to go to the Song Lang Hall of Law Enforcement to see what those bullies want. Arriving at the hall, the protagonist is greeted by a crowd and two law enforcement masters. As soon as they arrive, one of the masters announces that the Hall of Law Enforcement has been notified. He states that Su Liu, a disciple of the Rune Seal Department, violated the Academy's rules and maliciously injured fellow disciples. As per the Academy's rules, he requests that the protagonist kindly hands Su Liu over. At least he tried to ask politely. After hearing all of that, the protagonist says that this is quite the spectacle. One of the masters then says that there is clear evidence against Su Liu and asks her to please come with them. The protagonist immediately slams his axe on the ground and tells them not to rush. He then calls one of the masters over and asks about the two Beast Training Department disciples who invaded Kingluan Peak in the middle of the night looking for trouble. He asks what the master did with them. The master replies that they entered the peak by accident and that they've already been severely punished. The protagonist questions, by accident. He then says that in that case, his disciple also injured them by accident. He tells them that he will handle the situation himself and that there's no need for the Hall of Law Enforcement to interfere. He then heads back to the portal to return to the peak. The conversation ends there for him. Furious, the master shouts at the protagonist and Su Liu to stop. He says that the Hall of Law Enforcement has already judged his disciple as guilty, and if the protagonist persists, things won't end well for him. In a terrifying manner, the protagonist looks at the master and asks if he's telling the protagonist how he should proceed. The master, intimidated, swallows his words. Then one of the masters yells to the others, claiming that they saw with their own eyes the protagonist's actions. Didn't they? The protagonist is trying to cover for the criminal Su Liu. This only worsens things. He again asks them to please take Su Liu away immediately. Two of the three masters step forward and say that everyone who has opposed the Hall of Law Enforcement hasn't ended well. They claim that the protagonist knows this all too well. Mockingly, the protagonist says that they are nothing but children and questions if they really think they represent the Hall of Law Enforcement. Now they've touched his ego. Furious, one of the masters asks how the protagonist dares to defame the Hall of Law Enforcement. He says that he'll take them to the hall so both of them can be punished. Then they charge at the protagonist and Su Liu to attack. Meanwhile, the third master thinks to himself the protagonist still believes he's the genius instructor that appeared 10 years ago. The trash of a protagonist, still in the rotation light stage, has the audacity to challenge the Hall of Law Enforcement. He realizes the protagonist really doesn't care if he lives or dies. As the masters approach Sue and the protagonist, he tells Sue that this will serve as a test to see what she learned last night. He asks her not to disappoint him. Then he pushes Sue towards the masters. With a swift move, one of the masters attacks Sue, who quickly asks if that's all they have to show. Sue then easily dodges the master's attacks, passing between them. They miss their strikes and hit the ground instead. Sue realizes that this is exactly what the protagonist wanted to test her for. She sees that the two are so weak they're not worth the protagonist's time. As she dodges all the master's attacks effortlessly, Sue also thinks that as long as she stays close to the protagonist, it won't be long until she reaches Ascension. Seeing Sue counterattack one of the masters, the second master wonders what she's doing. He soon realizes that she's drawing runes in the middle of the fight while dodging everything. She's truly multifunctional. Then he realizes that even a rune seal master needs to draw the seals beforehand. He wonders if Sue is actually drawing them in the middle of the battle. Furious, the first master wonders if Sue is truly underestimating them. The two masters then decide to attack together and use that against Su Liu. They charge at Sue again, but once again they fail. Missing their attacks, they strike the ground instead. Up high, one of the masters declares that he will finish Su Liu off together with his partner. Finding it all tiresome, Su Liu says they're a hassle and asks them to let her finish drawing the runes. Furious, the master tells Su Liu to go to hell and launches a sword strike, sending a type of green dragon towards her. After finishing drawing the runes, Su Liu raises two fingers, creating a blue energy at their tips, and says that this is enough for them. She's about to end the fun. Su Liu then creates a protective shield that renders the magic cast by the masters completely useless. After the explosion, the masters wonder if it worked. When the dust settles, they realize that Su Liu is completely unharmed, with a blue lightning-like energy controlled by her fingertips. Su Liu tells the masters that it's time to take this seriously. She then launches a lightning spell at them, quickly taking them out. Watching from behind, the protagonist knows that Su Liu used the thunder element, and that the snake's gallbladder is wood attribute, which won't be very useful to her. It seems that the protagonist will need to return to the Kangwu Abyss and find a thunder attribute realm-breaking artifact for Su Liu. Su Liu then says that the trouble is over as the two masters lie defeated on the ground. She put those elements to sleep quickly. Song Lang, one of the masters, asks Master He if he's not going to do anything as they only got this far because of him. Furious, he thinks to himself about how the two couldn't even defeat Su Liu, which makes Song Lang wonder if he could defeat her. Drawing a few more runes, Su Liu launches another thunder spell at Song Lang, but ends up hitting Master He instead. The spell strikes his chest, making him kneel and wonder why that damned Su cast a seal on him. Su Liu then thinks to herself about how she hit Master He if she had aimed for Song Lang. The protagonist tells Su Liu to move away. Song Lang then says that this is serious provocation and that the protagonist ignored his disciple's crime and retaliated against the Hall of Law Enforcement. He claims that this won't go unpunished and that soon the protagonist will regret it. Little does he know. Mockingly, the protagonist asks regret and claims that it is the three of them who should be regretting this. This makes Song Lang wonder if the protagonist really said that. With great menace, the protagonist demands that all three of them kneel before him. The three immediately kneel, causing thunder and lightning to erupt throughout the Hall of Law Enforcement. One of the masters says that this is impossible. How can someone in the rotation light stage have such a threatening spiritual IQ? He then asks the protagonist if he has already recovered. Ignoring the question, the protagonist says that they are at Kingluan Peak. Song Lang responds to the master, telling him that the protagonist hasn't recovered. He explains that the Academy's instructors can borrow the spiritual key of their peaks. Then Song Lang takes a green aura token and wonders what Elder 2 is trying to contact at this moment. Suddenly, Song Lang feels a pain in his chest, causing him to spit out blood. The three of them immediately flee. The protagonist says that he will let them escape out of respect for Elder 2. Master He is still kneeling under the curse Su Liu placed on him. The protagonist then tells him that he will remain kneeling there until Veteran Yu comes to speak with him in person, to resolve this face-to-face soon. In the beast-taming department, Vice Instructor Cheng asks if there were any issues in his absence and wants to know what exactly happened. After Song Lang explains, the Vice Instructor asks if Xiang Sheng is still kneeling in front of Kingluan Peak. Upon receiving confirmation, Cheng tells Song Lang and the other master that they can return to the Hall of Law Enforcement. He will handle it personally. Both men bow to Cheng and say they will take their leave. After turning their backs to Cheng, Song Lang thinks that even though the protagonist has Kingluan Peak, he's no match for someone in the realm of opening the exit. Vice Director Chang tells Yin Hai that they will go to Kingluan Peak tomorrow night to bring his older brother back. Yin Hai agrees with Chang. At Kingluan Peak in the late afternoon, as the protagonist eats, he reflects on how much time has passed and wonders why no one from the beast taming department has come to see him yet. After finishing his meal, the protagonist goes to check on Su Liu. Upon finding her, he sees Su Liu drawing runes with her hands. In an attempt to surprise her, the protagonist throws a piece of wood while she's distracted. Su Liu quickly turns around and breaks the piece of wood with a kick. She has plenty of strength. The protagonist then compliments her, saying that it wasn't bad. She maintained the seal even while being attacked unexpectedly, which makes Su Liu very happy. He then tells Su Liu that he will need to leave and that if anyone from the beast taming department shows up, she should use the talisman he gave her. Su assures him not to worry, saying she will handle anyone who tries to cause trouble. Flying off quickly, the protagonist tells her to take care of the place and that he will return early tomorrow. Su Liu wishes him a safe and good journey. The story then mentions that the Kangwa Abyss is home to demonic tribes and beasts. The further one goes into the abyss, the more powerful the demons and beasts become. In its depths, the 12 ancestral demons reside, creatures so dangerous that even those in the Mahayana realm avoid them. Pretty obvious, but alright. Flying swiftly, the protagonist lands on a stone ledge and thinks that at Su Liu's current cultivation level, there is no need to kill an ancestral demon. He decides to try and find something less dangerous to help her cultivation. He acknowledges that finding something suitable will be tricky, but plans to ask one of the Thunder Elemental Kings for assistance. Looking down, the protagonist spots a lost young woman from the academy on the trail and wonders what she's doing there. Suddenly, she is struck by a purple magic attack, causing an explosion. Seeing this, the protagonist is tired of one problem after another. He summons a blue aura and decides it's better to go check out what's going on. Despite defending herself with a green shield, the young woman falls to the ground as one of the men who attacked her asks if she has any tricks left. He then says that no one would have imagined they could capture her alone. The young woman tells him to get away from her. Things are getting a bit too strange. The man looks at the young woman and remarks that those from the Four Arts department are just entertainment for men. With a rather suspicious tone, he tells her that if she's nice and entertains him, maybe he'll let her live. The young woman, Yunru, declares that the man will not touch her, even if it means she has to die. She places 2 fingers on her forehead and begins casting a type of magic. However, she is soon caught off guard as the man grabs her head and seals her power. On the ground, Yunruo wonders if her spiritual power has truly been sealed. Running his hand across Yunruo's face, the man comments on how soft her skin is and bets that other parts of her are even softer. Witnessing this scene, unable to move, Yunruo thinks of her older sister and realizes that she is about to be defiled by this unscrupulous person. I'm at a loss for words here. From a distance, the protagonist tells Yunru to strike at her Danjong point, the acupuncture point in the center of the chest. Yun realizes that she can now move again. She attacks the man, paralyzing him and throwing him back with a fatal blow that creates a huge hole in his torso. Not understanding how she managed that, she thanks the protagonist for his help. Seeing that Yunru is swaying, seemingly falling into nothingness, the protagonist wonders if all students under the Great Sister Yu's tutelage act this way. The young man who was accompanying the large man says that Yunru will pay for what she did to his master. Even though he knows she has little spiritual energy left, Yunru tells him to test his luck if he dares. Knowing that Yunru is bluffing as he knows she used all her spiritual energy for that attack, the young man charges at Yun. He's about to get his face smashed. After Yunru is exposed, she asks the protagonist what she should do next. The protagonist tells her to step left and strike the kidney acupuncture point. She does as he says but fails. The young man mocks her, asking if she really thought it would be that simple to hit him. He then tells her to go to hell and attacks. Just as he's about to succeed, the protagonist snaps his fingers, binding the young man in several chains. He then tells Yun to go ahead and kill him. Before doing so, Yun tells the protagonist that the young man knows the whereabouts of her older sister and asks if she can deal with him after finding out where her sister is. Immediately, the young man tells Yun not to waste her time. He claims that in order to preserve her purity, her older sister exploded her ocean of energy and fled. He further says that since she destroyed her key ocean, he bets she was already devoured by the Kangwa Abyss insects. Yunruo tells him to stop lying, insisting that her older sister would never lose to someone like him. The young man then dares Yunru to kill him if she has the courage. He says that the Disjointed Border sect won't let this slide. Yunru asks him if he is part of the Disjointed Border sect. From a distance, the protagonist calls out to the despicable man with a split hairstyle, asking what the Disjointed Border sect of the Northern Kingdom sent him here for. This information would be useful. The young man asks how the protagonist ended up there. He then wonders if the protagonist is so famous that he knows him. The young man dismisses it as impossible, calling the protagonist nothing more than trash in the rotating light stage. This makes Yunru question if the person secretly helping her was the useless Bailuxian. The protagonist approaches the man and tells him that he's not interested in wasting time interrogating him and demands he start talking. The young man refuses to speak. Without hesitation, the protagonist snaps his fingers and obliterates the young man forever. Furious, Yunru asks the protagonist how she is supposed to find her older sister now that he has killed that man. Calmly, the protagonist tells Yun to trust him, assuring her that he knows how to find her sister. And that is indeed true. He then asks Yunru if she has anything belonging to her sister that she used recently. It would be very helpful if she did. Yun replies that her sister embroidered the handkerchief for her. The protagonist creates a firebird and gives it the handkerchief, instructing the bird to find the one who embroidered it. Yun expresses her hope and asks the bird to uncover the true whereabouts of her older sister. As they continue on their journey, the bird finds a deep and dark hole, quickly locating Yunru's sister. Inside, her sister reflects on how she ended up there after escaping from the despicable men who had been trying to kill her. Now that her Kyoshin was destroyed, she suspects that this hole, barely 6 meters deep, will be her grave. She wonders if Yunru is safe. Hey everyone, are you enjoying this story so far? Don't forget to leave a like to show some support and drop a comment about what you think. If you have any stories you'd like to see here on the channel, just comment the name. I'm always watching for great stories to bring to you. Soon, Yunru and the protagonist arrive at the hole, calling for her older sister and asking if she's down there. From the bottom, her sister calls back, asking if it's really her up there. Excited, Yun tells the protagonist that her sister is indeed in that hole. The protagonist confirms it but mentions that she is badly injured. Longing to be with her sister, Yunru says she will go down to get her. Quickly, the protagonist asks her to calm down and assures her that he will take care of it. The protagonist then creates a suspension talisman with his hand, points it at the hole, and conjures some bubbles to levitate Yunru's sister out of the hole. Overjoyed to see her sister, Yun immediately hugs her. Her sister tells her to calm down, assuring her that she's fine. Yun then asks her sister, Youngsi, to thank the protagonist for saving her. Youngsi immediately expresses her gratitude. The protagonist offers her a 5 elements Yuan cultivation pill to help her recover, the same powerful pill Jang gave him. Youngsi recognizes the pill as a treasure from the Academy's pill department, something extremely valuable, and insists she cannot accept such a precious gift. The protagonist reassures her that now is not the time to worry about that and asks her what's more important, the pill or her life. Furthermore, he received the pill for free. Yunru accepts the pill and thanks the protagonist on behalf of both sisters. After Youngsi consumes the pill, she is amazed by how quickly her lead wound heals, instantly. Youngsi tells the protagonist that she will remember his kindness and someday she will repay him. Yun also thanks the protagonist for all his help. The protagonist replies that there's no need to thank him and points out that they shouldn't be in this situation, given their current level of power. He then asks why they went to the Kangwu Abyss, making the two sisters glance at each other, unable to offer an answer. Meanwhile, on the Kinglun Peak, Su Liu finally finishes reading a page. Feeling like she's making progress, she decides it's best to go cultivate. As she touches the glowing stone on her shelf, she senses someone approaching the peak. Outside, Vice Director Cheng Kun floats down, speaking about all the problems the protagonist has caused. Cheng then says that he allowed his disciple to break the Academy's rules and also resisted the law enforcement hall violently. He demands that the protagonist and Su Liu leave and accept their punishments. Quite an impossible request, isn't it? Returning to the Kangwu Abyss, the protagonist scolds the sisters, claiming that they must be trying to get themselves killed, and asks why the hell they went into a place inhabited by ancestral demons. Yunru admits that it's all her fault. She had been trying to find materials to repair their master's instrument, but her recklessness led to what happened. Upon hearing Yun's response, the protagonist begins to wonder if something's off with the story. Then Yun continues, saying she was hunting a 9th grade ice silk serpent nearby. She might be mistaken, but she believes that people from the disformed sect were also after it. The protagonist soon dismisses that idea. A mere 9th grade demon. Why would the sect chase it all the way from the northern part of the kingdom to the south? He thinks she might be mistaken. The ice silk serpent isn't a greater demon, it's a spiritual demon in its molting state. In real life, it's quite an interesting creature. Then Yunru asks the protagonist if he's going to catch the ice silk serpent. He says yes and explains that it's an extremely rare demon beast with both water and thunder attributes. He mentions that his disciple is about to undergo a breakthrough and needs a material with the thunder attribute, and the ice silk serpent is the perfect item. They then call the sisters to continue as the protagonist needs to return before dawn. Yun-Ru comments that the protagonist treats his disciple very well and both she and her older sister Youngsun are jealous. Youngsun immediately taps Yun-Ru on the head and asks her to stop talking nonsense, saying their master treats them very well. As night falls and they return to King Luan Peak, Vice Instructor Chang shouts for the protagonist to appear. Su Liu opens the door to her room and says she's sorry, but the protagonist is not present. She adds that she'll let him know what the Vice Instructor wants when he returns, kind of like a reminder. Ignoring everything Su Liu said, Cheng demands that she kneels. She responds, asking why she should kneel when she's done nothing wrong. Cheng insists that she should prostrate herself in the presence of an elder and asks if the Trashima protagonist never taught her the Academy's rules. Su Liu apologizes, saying she didn't know such a rule existed and claims that neither she nor the protagonist are trash. She asks Cheng to please be more respectful. Furious, Cheng summons a green aura around himself and says that Su Liu is extremely insolent. He wonders how a mere newly admitted disciple dares to challenge the Vice Instructor. Then he orders Su Liu to kneel once more, sending a blast of energy in her direction, leaving a palm mark on the ground. Persisting with her defiance, Su Liu keeps insisting that she did nothing wrong and won't kneel. Cheng, growing even angrier, says he wants to see how long she will keep up this attitude. He launches several projectiles at King Luan Peak and Su Liu. Now it's getting serious. As the dust settles, Cheng notices that Su is still standing, surrounded by a massive blue aura. He quickly realizes that, in order to avoid kneeling, Su burned her kingdom. He understands that this disciple is truly obstinate. If word of this gets out, it could ruin the prestige of the beast training department. Cheng then concludes that Su Liu cannot remain alive and orders Yin Hai to kill her. Yin Hai asks if the master is sure about this. Cheng commands him to do as ordered and questions if he's going to disobey his master's orders. Yin Hai says that he would never do such a thing, stating that he doesn't think the protagonist's disciple has done anything that deserves the death penalty. He asks Cheng to let him talk to her, suggesting they don't need to kill her if she admits her mistakes. From below, Su Liu retorts that no one would imagine that such a trash master like Cheng could produce such an honorable disciple. A rather ironic observation. Descending from above, Yin Hai tells Su Liu that her master is an extremely proud man. He says Cheng would let this pass if she would kneel and admit her mistakes, and argues that it's not worth risking her life for the sake of pride. Su replies to Yin, saying she never expected that the most prestigious department in the southern kingdom of Yunhuang would have a vermin like Master Cheng. Yin Hai asks why Su Liu is going so far with her words, to which she replies that it's for Yin Hai to stop talking so much. She adds that if Yin Hai's master wants to kill her, then go ahead. She won't beg for mercy. Yin Hai, with a hint of regret, says he's sorry, but he can't disobey his master's orders. With a card up her sleeve, Su boldly says that she should be the one apologizing. She claims that technique was meant for the trash of a Master Cheng. Just as Yin Hai is about to finish Su Liu off, he is suddenly knocked away by the protagonist's horse, Xiao Wu, who headbutts him. After seeing this, Yin Hai understands what Xiao Wu is. It's a demon spirit. Quite a small detail for an animal, right? Xiao Wu summons a purple aura around itself and stands in front of Su Liu to protect her. Cheng, seeing Xiao Wu, comments that he wouldn't have remembered the horse if it hadn't interfered. He adds that it was Xiao Wu's choice to get involved, so we shouldn't blame Cheng for that. Cheng then conjures a green rope around the horse's neck, causing it to fall to the ground. But Xiao Wu quickly rises, angrier than before, and charges at Cheng. Cheng responds with a fatal blow to Xiao Wu's abdomen, throwing the horse aside. Seeing this, Su Liu tells Cheng that he should just kill her, because he can be sure that she will make him pay for everything he's done. Charging quickly towards Su, Cheng says he will grant her request. In a final attempt to eliminate Cheng, Su uses her last trick and declares that the current distance is perfect for her moon fairy wheel to hit the target. She claims she burned her entire kingdom to use it to finish off Cheng. She successfully lands the blow on Cheng. However, he declares that he would have died in a foolish manner if he hadn't brought a treasure with him. He then realizes that Su must have some tricks up her sleeve, and that's why she was able to fight against Song Lang and the two useless ones. He adds that this girl must die quickly. It seems he fears her potential. Knowing that her spiritual energy is depleted, Cheng uses the same rope he used on Xiao Wu to catch Su Liu. He pulls her toward him, choking her by the neck. Stu then tells Cheng that the protagonist won't let him get away with this. Cheng replies that he also planned to kill him, and that the trash of a protagonist means nothing to him. Xiao Wu, badly injured, struggles to rise and defend the peak and Su Liu. Seeing Xiao trying to get up, Cheng warns him to run and not to come any closer to them. Cheng declares that he will kill Su first and then teach Xiao Wu a lesson. After all this, Su Liu remembers what the protagonist told her the day before. If anyone from the beast training department appears, use the talisman. She immediately sticks the talisman to Cheng's arm, making him ask if the little piece of paper will make any difference at this point. Sometimes, a little piece of paper makes all the difference. After the talisman explodes on Cheng's arm, he is transformed into a blue bird that starts shooting multiple projectiles toward Cheng, breaking his protective treasure, which had kept him alive from Su Liu's surprise attack and leaving him completely drained. Soon, Yin Hai approaches Cheng and asks if he's okay. Exhausted, Cheng tells Yin Hai to be silent. He says the girl deserves a lesson as she destroyed his protective treasure. He asks Yin for a 5 elements pill. Yin Hai suggests that it might be better to return, claiming Cheng's injuries are serious. Ignoring Yin Hai's concerns and consuming multiple pills, Cheng declares he refuses to believe that someone like him, a teacher, can't discipline such a simple girl. He charges towards Su Liu in a furious rage, claiming she will die. Seeing the green light coming toward her, Su wonders if this is her end. Usually people say that when they see a white light, but okay. Before Cheng can hit her, Su Liu sees her master taking the full brunt of Cheng's attack. The protagonist then creates a clone of himself and grabs Cheng's hand. Attempting to speak to the protagonist, Su is interrupted as he tells her not to speak. He says Su Liu's heart has suffered a great blow. The protagonist then tells Cheng that he took advantage of his absence to threaten his disciple and questions how a vice instructor in the beast training department could have the nerve to do such a thing. This causes the clone to lift Cheng by the head and slam him into the ground violently, destroying his face. In this moment, Cheng thinks he's at the stage of opening the exit and is ranked among the top 5 instructors of the academy, so he wonders why he can't defeat a trash at the rotating light stage. The clone continues to beat Cheng relentlessly, leaving him in worse and worse condition. Seeing this, Yin Hai begs the protagonist to stop. The protagonist then orders the golden bell to obey his command. The golden bell falls onto Yin Hai, trapping him and giving him a front row seat to watch his master be completely beaten by the protagonist's clone. Quite a privileged view, right? While being brutally beaten by the clone, Cheng is simultaneously healed, making him suffer and humiliate himself even more. After the beating is over, the protagonist lifts Cheng by the head, looks at Yin Hai, and says that they should be grateful to the academy leader and his older brother, Lai Guanqi. The protagonist tells them he won't kill them because of those two. The protagonist then throws Cheng to Yin Hai and tells them to disappear from the Kinlun Peak. Even in his weakened state, Cheng asks Yin Hai for the 5 elements pill. Yin Hai gives it to him and says they won't leave until Cheng finishes what he came to do. Once Cheng has recovered completely, he says, leave, and claims the wretched protagonist only caught him off guard. He's just making excuses. Cheng then tells Yin Hai that his master hasn't shown his true abilities yet and asks for his storage ring immediately. Meanwhile, as the protagonist heals Su Liu, she apologizes to him, saying she couldn't protect the Kinlun Peak properly, and that even Xiao Wu got injured trying to protect her. The protagonist reassures Su Liu that it's not her fault and that she did what she could. He tells her that the most important thing now is to repair her meridians. He warns her that she will feel a slight sting and asks her to hang in there. After obtaining his storage ring, Cheng summons his most powerful guardian beast and tells Yin Hai to admire it, claiming this is the true power of his master. Cheng then declares that the water is his most powerful guardian beast, a grade 8 demon spirit, a horned griffin. He challenges the protagonist to see if he'll continue to ignore him. With just a simple glance from a pouch hanging at the protagonist's waist, the griffin's feathers fly faster than it can move, leaving it completely plucked and fleeing from the scene. Suvan sisters Yunru and Yunsi arrive at Kinlun Peak and ask what happened there. The protagonist says they arrived just in time and asks them to take care of Su Liu in his place. He then explains that not wanting to create conflicts, he kept to himself on Kinlun Peak for many years. However, they kept coming to stir trouble, even attempting to kill his disciple. Quite the opposite attitude, really. The protagonist then shows the blood-snatching talisman. Cheng asks if the protagonist has lost his mind. Trying to escape, Cheng knows that the talisman will turn anyone into a pool of blood, and he absolutely cannot die there. But before he can flee, the protagonist's clone catches up to him, throwing him back to Kinlun Peak. Cheng tells the protagonist that they both teach at the same academy and warns that the protagonist will face divine punishment if he uses the blood-snatching talisman on him. With great authority, the protagonist responds, "Divine punishment? I am the divine punishment." He then launches the talisman at Cheng. Fear is not in his vocabulary. Desperately, Cheng pleads for the souls to stay away from him, but he is soon transformed into a mere pool of blood. The protagonist realizes that Su Liu activated the talisman and is in danger. He immediately flies toward her in a hurry. With a snap of his fingers, the protagonist removes the blood-snatching talisman from Cheng, leaving only his clothes behind. Looking at the scene, Yun-Ru realizes just how terrifying the talisman truly is. Kneeling, Yin-Hai mourns his master. The protagonist says he tried to avoid this, but Cheng didn't leave him a choice. Kneeling and crying, Yin-Hai calls out to the protagonist, who snaps his fingers, cutting almost all of Yin-Hai's hair off. He tells Yin-Hai that he doesn't like to kill indiscriminately and asks him to take this as a lesson. He adds that if Yin-Hai wants to find a master in the future, he should make sure to choose someone with at least some integrity. Turning his back to Yin-Hai, the protagonist tells him not to let anyone know what happened there and reminds him to take his older brother, who's still kneeling at the gate. Yin-Hai bows to the Grandmaster and promises to remember this. Quite hard to forget, but okay. From afar, the sisters observe the protagonist with Su Liu and her horse, Xiao Wu. Yun-Ru tells Youngsi that it's best they leave now. They inform the protagonist that they're about to head out and thank him for today. Yun-Ru also says she'll visit him in the future. The protagonist warmly welcomes them to Kingluan Peak and reminds them to say hi to Sister Yu when they return. Watching the protagonist talk to the two sisters, Su Liu, seemingly a bit jealous, wonders if they'll become regular visitors. The protagonist then snaps his fingers, saying the first thing he'll do is change his clothes. Noticing that he's being watched, the protagonist quickly looks up and sees a demonic bird in the sky, just observing them. Su asks if he saw something in the sky. He immediately responds that it was nothing. Nothing is a strong word, but okay. In the seclusion cave, the Supreme Leader wonders how the hell the protagonist dared to use such a brute method to kill his nephew Cheng. The Supreme Leader then tells Tu Wangxing that since the protagonist cares so much about his disciple, he asks if Wangxing knows what to do in this year's exam. Wangxing replies, assuring the leader not to worry, as he knows exactly what needs to be done, and that the law enforcement department has already prepared everything. Back at Kingluan Peak, the protagonist says he almost forgot the gift he brought for his disciple. He then summons the ice silk worm he captured. He mentions that his original plan was to obtain a broken mirror structure, but since he accidentally bumped into the worm, he decided to bring it along. Surprised to see it, Su Liu recognizes the ice silkworm as a demon king with strength comparable to a cultivator at the recombination stage. She wonders why it is so obedient to its master. The protagonist tells Su Liu that the ice silkworm possesses lightning and water attributes and is extremely compatible with her. He asks if she would let it assist in her cultivation. Knowing that even as an immortal in her past life, Su had struggled to subjugate demon kings, she realizes how casually the protagonist gives her one of them. He must be on a whole other level. Overjoyed, Su Liu jumps into the protagonist's arms and thanks him for the gift. The protagonist then reminds her that the big test is approaching and Su needs to recover her strength as soon as possible. Su reassures him that she won't disappoint him. He advises her to remain calm, though, as her excitement might interfere with her exam. He also reminds her not to forget that she can take the ice silk worm with her. Su Liu asks if this isn't considered cheating. The protagonist tells her not to worry, as he can suppress the worm's realm to a level she can take it with her. He channels power into his hand and tells the ice silk worm he will suppress its realm. He warns that it might hurt a little since it's the first time. The protagonist begins to levitate the ice silk worm, enveloping it in a giant cocoon. Seeing this, Su Liu wonders how the protagonist said he would suppress it. But why did its cultivation improve? After finishing the cocoon, it starts to crack open, and from within emerges the demon queen Eni Meng. She immediately greets Su Liu and asks to be called Xiao Meng, a name she prefers. Su Liu finds Xiao Meng incredibly beautiful. She mentions that she always thought demons had a scary, threatening appearance, but this is the first time she's seen such a beautiful transformation like Xiao Meng's. Unable to hold back, Su Liu pets Xiao Meng's head, and Xiao Meng asks if Su Liu has recently joined the sect and how she encountered other demon kings. Su Liu quickly responds that she saw images of Xiao Meng in a book. Realizing she's lying, Su looks around to make sure the protagonist didn't hear her. The protagonist senses something strange and comments that it's hard to analyze. Analyze what? The protagonist then says he'll leave Liu's rupture under Xiao Meng's care. Xiao Meng reassures him not to worry, promising she'll do a great job. The protagonist tells the two of them that it's getting late and asks them to head to the accommodations and rest. He can barely stand anymore. Back then, while feeding Xiao Wu, the protagonist realizes that it seems Yin X's guess was correct. The jade piece Xiao Meng had been trying to protect at all costs was the real target of the disformed sect. However, he knows that the system cannot analyze the jade and wonders what's so special about it. Quickly, the system notifies him that he has activated a random mission. It tells the protagonist that if his disciple, Su Liu, advances a stage within 5 days and takes first place in the exam, he will be rewarded with a Star Martial Arts gift pack, a Star Special Item gift pack, and a surprise prize. However, it also warns that if the protagonist refuses or fails the mission, his spiritual IQ will be reduced by 30%, and the system will judge if the results are satisfactory. Surprised to see the system talking to him, the protagonist remarks that he didn't know the system also gave missions. He thought it was only the firewood counter. This remark makes the system furious, and it demands to know if the protagonist thinks something is wrong with it. Enraged, the system confronts the protagonist and demands, "Dear protagonist, please decide. Will you accept to or no T?" With no choice, the protagonist accepts the mission but immediately says that the rewards are useless to him. He plans to give them to Liu and asserts that with the ice silkworm's help, she'll ascend in no time. As he heads to his room to sleep, the system transforms into a woman, touching the protagonist's face and saying she was so close. She adds that she would love to be with him. 5 days later, on the way to the academy's admission exam, the students notice someone cooking something on a stone and comment that it smells great. Upon looking, Jiang realizes it's Bai Luqian and immediately asks what the hell he's doing. Politely, as we can see. The protagonist asks Jiang if he's also interested in the wild cooking game. Just then, a type of angel appears, asking the protagonist if he would like to hear the words of their Lord and Savior, words incomprehensible to humans. Confused, the protagonist wonders what the strange bird from Ezra Peak is. Little does he know it's an angel. Jiang then explains that they're on their way to the academy's admission exam and asks the protagonist what he thinks he's doing. Furious that his disciples are enjoying the smell of the protagonist's food, Jiang orders everyone to return and line up properly. The protagonist simply states that he's just cooking and isn't affecting them in any way. Disapproving, Jiang tells the protagonist that someone like him doesn't deserve the title of instructor, something the protagonist already knows and has heard 1,000,000 times. Disciples from the Beast Department are discussing and saying that the department is in trouble. One says they don't know why, but both of the leader brothers suddenly went into closed-door cultivation. Another disciple responds that they're mistaken. Since they're gone, they finally have a chance to shine. Soon after, Su Liu arrives carrying a bag and with a butterfly on her head, Xiao Meng. Seeing her, Feng Su from the extermination department wonders if that's Su Liu. He acknowledges that her talent isn't bad but says it's a pity she's a disciple of such a piece of trash. Soon Feng Su greets Su Liu, introducing himself as Feng Su from the extermination department. However, Su Liu turns her back to him and rushes toward the protagonist. As she gets closer, the protagonist tells her to leave as he's busy. With her mouth watering, Su Liu asks what he's cooking this time and if she can take a bite. Her hunger is clearly getting the better of her. The protagonist firmly says, "No way." Even though he doesn't know what it is, the amount of spiritual cayenne is too much for her. Furious, Feng Su demands to know how Su Liu dares to ignore his riz. At that moment, Yu Wangxing, the instructor from the extermination department, places a hand on Feng Shu's shoulder and tells him not to get upset over women. He adds that envy is something only the weak and incapable feel. Just then, a student spots the Four Arts department and announces it to everyone. The students are immediately smitten by the girls from the department. Yu Wangxing notices the instructor from the Four Arts department moves Wanju and heads over to greet her. Ignored completely by her, as Wanju walks up to the protagonist and thanks him for saving her disciples. Jealous, Su Liu hubs the protagonist as he asks Wanju what she's talking about. He then introduces his Aunt Master, Moon, the instructor from the Four Arts department. Su Liu greets her Aunt Master quickly, her jealousy evident as she wonders why another woman is there. A bit possessive, as we can see. Attempting to hold back Yu Wangxing, Feng Su reminds him that didn't Wangxing himself say that envy is something only the weak and incapable feel? Furious, Wangxing retorts that he's not envious. He asks Feng Shu if he looks like he's envious to him. At that moment, the Elder of Tasks demands silence and asks everyone to look at him. He explains how the exam will work. He says this time the exam will take place in the secret realm, and he will announce the rules. The limit will be 2 days, and the ranking will be decided by the number of points collected by the end. In addition to finding treasures and killing demons, participants will also be able to steal another team's token to earn points. However, he warns that if the Eye of All-Seeing catches anyone intentionally trying to take someone's life, they will be immediately disqualified and punished. After explaining everything, the Elder starts the exam. Feng Su tells the extermination department members to occupy all advantageous positions. Missing this opportunity is not an option. Soon, Su Liu tells the protagonist she's going. Looking back, she sees her Aunt Master Moon humming the protagonist and feels a pang of jealousy. She thinks she doesn't want to leave just yet. Moon then asks the protagonist if he isn't worried about Su Liu, who recently became his first disciple. The protagonist replies that Su Liu is not only talented but also works hard. She's stronger than everyone there. Moreover, she's his disciple. Inside the secret realm, as Su Liu chases a disciple, he thinks back to when people said the talisman department was a joke. He wonders how such a monster like her emerged. Terrified after falling, that disciple begs Su Liu not to come closer. She then takes his token, and the Eye of All-Seeing informs. Su Liu of the talisman department is currently ranked 47th in the exam. Eliminated people. 6. Su Liu realizes that this tactic isn't working and that she's moving too slowly. After noticing something strange nearby, she takes Xiao Meng, who is in butterfly form, on her head. Xiao Meng asks Su Liu to let her go and stop as no one is watching. She requests that Su speak like a normal person. In other words, to talk normally. In her real form, Xiao Meng asks Su Liu if she's trying to crush her. She says that the protagonist asked Xiao to pretend to be a great spirit and asks if Su has ever met a talking great spirit. Xiao Meng soon senses something nearby and tells Su to check it out. Su responds indifferently, saying she'll take a look. In the forest, two hooded figures appear, claiming they found someone. The second person urges the first to quickly lead the way. In the academy square, some spectators comment that things are getting brutal. Even though Zheng Su had already given up, Su Liu attacked him anyway. Another disciple questions if the department is led by a weakling and asks how the protagonist's disciple is so strong. A talent of 100, I'd say. Moon asks the protagonist if he doesn't think his disciple's behavior will attract attention from the other departments. Bai responds that only the weak care about the opinions of strangers, and those with real power trust in their own strength. Moon states that to this day, the protagonist is still the same Bai Luochen from 10 years ago, the one who rose to the heavens and looked down on the world. Embarrassed, the protagonist says Moon must be imagining things. Then the broadcast from the secret realm cuts off and everyone is left confused about what's happening. Elder Bing asks for silence, and one of the men next to him says they are witnessing a massive clash of spiritual Kai in the secret realm. In response, Elder Bing asks how fast the young man can restore the connection. I wouldn't tell you, Elder. The young man tells the Elder that it will be impossible to fix it from outside and that they'll need to send their department's disciples to resolve it from inside. A master then instructs the disciples from the formation department to follow him as quickly as possible to the secret realm, as it's an emergency. The protagonist then sends his clone into the secret realm as well. Inside the secret realm, Su Liu is fighting against the two mysterious individuals who were in the forest. It's revealed that one is a man and the other is a woman. The woman tells Su Liu that she has talent, but it's sad because she won't live long enough to show her full potential. Su Liu asks the woman if she's not afraid of Su reporting her to the sect. The woman named Yishiling from the Justice Corridor of the Silent Spirit Realm asks who Su will report her to, the Justice Corridor. Lucio, also from the Justice Corridor, but from the Golden Core Realm, tells her to shut up and die already. He also says that no one told the protagonist to say what he shouldn't. As she unleashes a thunder-like power against the two, Su Liu declares that she refuses to believe that the two from the Justice Corridor can do whatever they want in here. Justice is a very strong word for this, but whatever. As Lucio defends Su Liu's attack, Yishiling asks her if she really thinks she will leave this place alive. Su Liu is surprised when Lucio's sword cuts her lightning in half. Lucio and Yishiling then announce it's time to finish this and charge towards Su Liu. Seeing no way out, Su Liu asks Xiao Meng for help, saying she can't be without cultivation again. Xiao Meng points out that she had already shown Su where the treasure was, and instead of finding it, Su got into trouble. Quickly, Xiao Meng freezes Yishiling. Trying to break through the ice, Lucio attempts to attack Xiao Meng with his sword, but the ice shatters his sword and freezes him as well. Then Xiao Meng transforms into her human form and tells the Demon Emperor that they are not her opponents. She warns that if they want to stay alive, they should leave while they still can. Lucio wonders how she managed to transform into a human, realizing she's a spiritual empress. Xiao Meng responds that the girl is under her protection and repeats that if they want to survive, they should leave immediately, forcing both Lucio and Yishiling to retreat right away. Listening to advice like that might help a little, you know. Su Liu asks Xiao Meng why she had become so big. Xiao Meng replies that it's to intimidate the enemies, obviously, but claims she doesn't want to reveal her true form to those trashy people. Su then asks if it's alright to let them go. Xiao Meng tells Su that the Empress isn't someone who'd be begging for favors and that she's only protecting her because the protagonist ordered it. She then points out the direction to the treasure again and tells Su to continue. A few days ago, Su Liu asks what Xiao Meng is trying to do by removing her clothes. Xiao Meng answers that she's doing the obvious, helping Su Liu cultivate. Doubting Xiao Meng's intentions, Su Liu asks her who in their right mind cultivates like that. With two of her hands on Su Liu's body, Xiao Meng responds that she's helping her heal her injuries. She explains that the medicine given to Su only prevents her wounds from worsening. In her current condition, Su cannot fully heal her injuries. Xiao Meng reassures her not to worry as she's using her Kai to treat them, though she warns that it might be a bit stimulating. Su, feeling uncomfortable, asks Xiao Meng to take it easy. Things were getting intense there. After leaving the secret realm, Elder Bing wonders how it's possible that there was a demon emperor inside. The small orange frog notes that many disciples still can't escape the ruins and that the teleportation isn't available. Elder Bing orders to take the teleporters inside and insists they must rescue all the disciples trapped inside. Inside, the sisters Youngsun and Yunruo meet with the protagonist and his master, Moon. The protagonist asks the sisters if they have seen Su Liu inside. Yun responds that they haven't. Moon comments that the disciples transported outside appeared next to their instructors, which means Su Liu might be in serious trouble, and serious is an understatement. Soon, the demon emperor Dong Su returns, proclaiming that the mortal world should tremble before him. He declares that this world belongs to him. Xiao Meng quickly transforms into her human form again and wonders what they should do now. She wonders why a demon emperor is sealed in a place like this. She thinks about leaving Su Liu behind to run, but she knows that the demon will kill her anyway. The demon emperor then asks why there's an insect here and attacks the two girls again. Xiao Meng conjures a wall of ice to defend herself and Su Liu. Su offers to help Xiao Meng, but Xiao Meng responds by saying that doing nothing is the best help. As the demon emperor intensifies his attack, he asserts that Xiao Meng is from the same race as him and questions what she's doing, asking if she's challenging him. Xiao Meng replies that the bald monkey is a slave created by demons and pleads with the emperor to spare them. Su Liu then asks Xiao Meng what they should do now. Xiao Meng tells her to run first, saying that she has her own ways. She uses a spell to throw Su Liu away, claiming that the emperor's view is being tainted by her presence. Knowing she needs to buy time for Xiao Meng to get Su Liu away, the demon emperor assures her that no one will be able to escape. Not exactly comforting to hear. Xiao Meng tells the demon emperor that it's not nice to eavesdrop on a girl's private conversation. The emperor responds by saying that they are all mere insects, and he can take their lives whenever he pleases. Xiao Meng then remembers the seal that the protagonist showed her, explaining that it can only be activated with the essence of her blood and warns that it should only be used if absolutely necessary. Using the seal, Xiao Meng injures herself and asks the emperor to say that to the monster. Meanwhile, a type of green vibrant root is shown, killing a disciple and turning him into a zombie. After passing through the portal and entering the secret realm, Elder Bing is shocked to see that zombie disciple attacking him. He quickly takes care of it only to encounter an army of plant zombies charging at them. An army that's not terribly frightening, but who knows? Maybe he didn't have a flamethrower on hand. Using the spiritual sword formation, the curtain of 10 iridescent blades, Elder Bing creates a green wall that blocks the zombies' path. He then tells Jiang to take the instructors to search for their disciples while the elders stay to protect the portals. He reminds them that those under Master Mu can only teleport people there. Once the disciples are found, they should return immediately and, most importantly, avoid fighting the demon emperor. Agreeing, Jiang suggests sending instructor Bai Luqian back to the academy. The protagonist asks why he should send him back to the academy. Furious, Jiang responds that Bai Luqian is still in the stage of light rebellion. If he enters, he'll die like a fool, and even worse, Jiang will have to bring back his body. He adds that he hasn't settled scores with him yet. Elder Bing then says that the protagonist has already sacrificed so much for the academy and insists he stay back this time. Moon tells Jiang that the protagonist is also an instructor. How could he be comfortable knowing his disciple is in danger? Especially his only disciple being there. She insists that Elder Bing should let him go. With no other choice, Elder Bing reluctantly agrees but warns them not to kill each other. Moon recognizes this as an opportunity to gauge how strong the protagonist has become. Jiang, however, calls the protagonist ungrateful, claiming he'll die and no one will bring his body back. The protagonist jokes that if that happens, 500 women will bring his body back. As the protagonist distracts the Emperor with an attack, his clone is ready for annihilation. The Emperor asks Duguer's set a trap for him. Little does he know. The clone then announces that the seal has been broken and is being resisted. He begins the annihilation, creating a giant black hole and hurling it at the demon Emperor. Xiao Meng's body is frozen in the ruins, but soon she emerges from a cocoon and remarks that the monster is crazy to have placed the seal there. She claims it's lucky she had a little cocoon to protect herself. A mini Xiao Meng appears and tells the human Xiao Meng to follow her. Upon reaching the location the mini Xiaomeng pointed to, she finds Su Liu lying on the ground with her left eye pierced by a root emerging from it. Ignoring Su Liu's body, Xiaomeng knows that if the leader's shadow is defeated, the demon emperor will come after her immediately. She also knows that Su Liu has been tainted by the demon's scent. If she takes Su with her, Xiaomeng will die as well. Understanding that with the seals broken, the monster won't find her for a while, Xiaomeng knows she was captured to be a pet. There's no reason for her to stay. Reflecting on the moments she had with Su Liu, Xiaomeng reluctantly picks up her body and mutters that she causes too many problems. She adds that it's better for her not to die because if she dies, who will wash the dishes and cook? Is that misogyny? What's that? Trying to escape from the clone, the demon emperor is knocked down by her and says that the strength of that shadow should not be appearing in this world. He asks the shadow who it is. Remaining silent, the emperor asks again if the shadow thinks it's not worthy of revealing its name and attacks it. But his attack is soon blocked by a green ball-shaped shield, which covers most of the shadow. Watching from a distance, Jiang asks the protagonist what kind of shadow that is. He claims it can connect with the demon emperor easily. The protagonist says it seems to be at the tribulation passing stage and that for sure Jiang can do the same. Jiang responds that he absolutely cannot and urges the protagonist to forget about the missing disciples and retreat. The protagonist then takes out a talisman, which makes Jiang ask why he's holding it. That guy sure doesn't fear anything. The protagonist responds, retreat for what? He sits in a corner and places the talisman on Jiang's forehead, rendering him unconscious. The protagonist then ties Jiang to a tree and says it's time for him to deal with that strange bird. Knowing his power is almost drained and that he hasn't managed to hurt the shadow, the demon emperor wonders if he will have to die again. After opening a portal above the demon emperor, the earth demon lord descends from it to assist him. The demon emperor then declares that with the earth demon lord's help, all of them, these mere insects, will be crushed. The protagonist's shadow says that the time limit has expired and it's time to return to the original body. The earth demon lord asks if the shadow thinks it will escape, attacking it immediately. From a distance, the protagonist orders and launches a green aura, instantly defeating the earth demon lord. A quick victory over the big guy in no time. The demon emperor wonders if there's another strong opponent. He then asks the protagonist who he is. Mocking him, the protagonist asks if he mentioned anything about the earth demon lord just now. He then asks if the emperor fought his other self for so long and still doesn't recognize him. The protagonist then launches an immortal binding talisman at the emperor. The demon emperor exclaims that it can't be. He wonders how a mere monkey in the revolving light stage could have an immortal binding talisman and a clone at the tribulation passing stage. The protagonist asks him, what does it matter if I'm in the revolving light stage? Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it's impossible. The demon emperor asks again who exactly is the protagonist. The protagonist replies that the emperor doesn't need to know who he is and asks him back, how did he know about the Western demon? Screaming in pain, the demon emperor asks what kind of monster the protagonist is and how he's able to burn his soul. Begging the protagonist to stop burning him, the demon emperor insists he truly knows nothing. From a distance, Xiaomeng hears those screams and realizes it's Dong Xu's cry, and that the protagonist won't punish her when he sees Su Liu in that state, right? Still screaming that he truly knows nothing, the demon emperor continues begging the protagonist to stop. The protagonist says there's no rush, and he can take as much time as he needs to think about it. Just then, Xiaomeng flies in carrying Su Liu in her arms and tells the protagonist that this is bad, that Miss Su Liu is about to die, which is really bad, by the way. After taking Su Liu into his arms, the protagonist asks Xiaomeng how she ended up like this. Crying, Xiaomeng apologizes to the protagonist and says that it's all her fault. She couldn't protect Miss Su Liu properly, and that her condition was caused by the demon emperor. Then the protagonist says that he no longer cares about how he's connected to the demon race. The demon emperor replies that the protagonist cannot kill him. If he does, the earth demon lord won't let him escape. The protagonist then opens a gate to the underworld, a place not exactly pleasant for a stroll. He declares that even if the supreme demon comes today, the demon emperor will still die. Begging, the demon emperor insists that he's an emperor and cannot die like this. He shouts for the earth demon lord to save him as he's dragged into the gate to the underworld. Xiaomeng says that it was to be expected, not even a demon emperor can do anything in his presence. Soon after, Su Liu wakes up contaminated by the zombie spirit and bites the protagonist's neck. He tells her to bite hard and not let go. After the curse is transferred to him, he asks if she slept well. After waking up, Su Liu apologizes to the protagonist, saying she went too far. The protagonist tells her not to worry, as it's not her fault. She then shows that the protagonist was infected by the demon emperor. He responds that it's just a remnant of the Emperor's power and is not a threat to him. He then burns the curse from his neck, finally rid of it. The system then reports that an external invasion has been detected and that antivirus mode has been activated. In the underworld, the demon Emperor says he never imagined the protagonist would be foolish enough to sacrifice himself to save his disciple. As long as there's a trace of him in this world, he can live forever. After taking the protagonist's heart, he will destroy all of them. But soon, the demon Emperor realizes that the antivirus program starts a full-scale annihilation and ends up destroying him once and for all. That night, in the disciple's room at King Luan Peak, Su Liu notices that her vision has worsened and that she needs to advance quickly. She wonders, sadly, if she has become a burden to the protagonist and Xiao Meng. She claims she has to grow stronger at any cost. After getting out of the bath, Xiao Meng says they work hard today, She asks Su Liu if her eye is still bothering her. Jokingly, Su says to Xiao Meng that she's a cyclops. After getting a slap from Xiao Meng, who tells her not to joke about it, Su Liu apologizes for the joke. A pretty creative joke, I'd say. Xiao Meng admits that this time it was her fault Su Liu ended up in that state, and she apologizes to her. She promises that next time she will protect her properly and won't let anything happen to her. Then, Xiao Meng tells Su Liu not to go to her side of the bed because it's too cramped. And that was today's story. If you liked it, leave a like to support the channel, subscribe, and hit the bell to not miss the next videos. Don't forget to comment what you thought and what story you want to see here. I'm always replying to the comments, and I'll bring the best stories you send. See you in the next videos.